brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. The 2026 trade deadline is probably going to be trash. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, man. But it just feels like we won't get the crazy fireworks of some other trade deadlines. Now, I will say, I'm trying to jinx it. 3 years ago, I made a video, the 2023 NBA trade deadline will be boring. And guess what happened? Kevin Durant got traded. Kyrie Irving got traded. Ended up being insane. So I'm trying to jinx it. But based on what we know now on January 7th, not a lot of things is happening. The only real rumor that we have that feels like an inevitability is Trae Young is going to be traded. But to who? Nobody knows. Because before I start filming this episode, Jake Fisher had a report that I'll bring up. Trae Young has shown interest in potentially joining Brooklyn or Minnesota, but neither team has showed interest back. Like what? You know, so Trae Young might be the biggest name that we see moved, and his market is genuinely the Washington Wizards. That's it. I mean, Raptors fans have hit me up saying they would be interested, and Heat fans have hit me up saying they'd be interested. But are the franchises interested? Like the fan base, listen, we know what we want. We know what we think is the right move, but the people in charge have to be the guys that are going to get it done. So Trae Young might be the biggest name moved, and maybe the only big name move, because some of the other names that we thought might be available may not be available at all. Remember Giannis? Giannis might get traded. No, that's not happening. Anthony Davis might get traded. And I guess there's still a possibility. There still are some reports about other teams being interested, but it just feels like it's unlikely that those bigger names will get moved. You got to remember where we are in the NBA world. In 2026, with the aprons, the first apron, the second apron, how teams are trying to avoid those things. In a world where teams will try to flaunt cap flexibility, knowing damn well they're not going to be able to do anything interesting with cap flexibility. And with teams having draft capital as an all-time asset, we just won't see many, at least in-season trades that feel insane. Like going back to the Giannis example, again, I don't think Giannis is going to get traded. It feels like the Milwaukee Bucks are not going to trade Giannis unless he verbally says, I want to be traded, which makes sense because he's the greatest player in franchise history. And what are they, 14-9 in the games that Giannis has played or something along those lines? And if you're 14-9 when Giannis is playing and this Eastern Conference is as trash as it is, where like the Knicks look like the favorite and they can't win games anymore because the defense is so trash, and the Detroit Pistons, who we know and love, are so young that maybe they're not ready. Maybe the Milwaukee Bucks are saying, hey, we have a chance to just sneak into there and make some noise. So yeah, we're not going to trade Giannis away right now. With Anthony Davis, there's so many rooms, and again, that might be one that could be available still. But if you are running the team, and first of all, I want to remind you that as of today, they still have an interim general manager, an interim guy in charge. And I always wonder, when you fire somebody of importance like that, the GM or basketball operations guy, and Nico Harrison during the season, do you want your interim guy to make the big decision? Do you want, I think it's Michael Finley and a few other guys, do you want Michael Finley, who you're not sure is going to keep the role, to make the biggest trade? The next big trade, post-trade in Luka? I don't know. Unless you're going to take that interim title away from him and make him the full-time GM. So do you want him making that decision? And does the decision make sense? Because you can squint your eyes a little bit and say, Cooper Flagg's obviously going to be as incredible as anybody. He's been showing that as a rookie. Kyrie Irving is going to be back next season. Anthony Davis is going to be here. We run it back next season. We still got most of the role players from the championship run that we had a couple years ago. We don't have Luka anymore, by the way. But the rest of the stuff is still there. You can be like, hey, you can see a future where that team is a competitive playoff team just next season. So maybe we hang on to Anthony Davis. Again, with the cap flexibility being flaunted in fans' face, with the aprons being a thing, and with the draft capital being super valuable, even if we were to see an all-time guy in this hypothetical Giannis become available, it just is increasingly more difficult to see those guys get traded in season. You got to think about the money that you're outputting when you're inserting a guy like Giannis into your lineup, into your team. He's making a ton of money. And if you are Giannis and you are the guy that's saying, I want out and I want to win a championship, the team that you're traded to has to give up somebody that is super valuable to get you. So you might be having to gut the core that makes Giannis interested in trading for you in the first place. And with it being in season, you don't really have an opportunity to build around before the postseason starts. That's why I think that if we do have more bigger deals, it would have to be in the postseason. Because again, in this hypothetical, if you're trading for Giannis, you still have an entire offseason to fill the roster, whether it be minimum guys or mid-level guys. And in the end season, you bring in Giannis, he's like, all right, you just got to work with what you got. Now, I'm not saying that if Giannis said he wanted to get traded, that teams wouldn't call to get it done right now. But I'm just saying that it just feels like it's super unlikely. So I'm like, what's going to happen? Probably nothing. Nothing happened. Because even the guy that I said, if there's anything that is a guarantee when it came to the trade deadline, Jonathan Kuminga's got to get traded, right? He signed basically a 1-year deal, a show deal, so he could come in and see if he could help the Warriors. And then he eventually is getting more DMPs and stuff. And then he is eligible to be traded on the 15th of this month. And then this from Anthony Slater comes out that's saying the Warriors are willing to keep Jonathan Kuminga past the deadline. That is crazy. The one guy that we thought was 100% sure getting traded might not get traded. Because what does this even mean? Team sources have said in recent days that they'd be willing to keep Kuminga past the deadline if nothing appealing enough materializes. Spoiler alert to the people running the Golden State Warriors. A lot of material appealing things won't materialize because the brother's really not playing for you. And you, as a team, need a guy that can put pressure on the rim. And y'all still don't think he's worthy enough to play. So who are you to believe that Jonathan Kuminga is going to have this robust market? Spoiler, he didn't have a robust market last season, and he hasn't played good this season to make... This is crazy. This is crazy. We always talk about the sunken cost fallacy. This is the definition of it. The brother cannot play for y'all. He has not really played for y'all. The last game he played was December 18th. December 18th. And I just had to make sure. Is he injured? Lower back soreness. Yeah, okay. Whatever, bro. No. Just a few days ago, Steve Kerr said JK is a player, Jonathan Kuminga, who told me this. He's a player who needs minutes and touches to get his rhythm going. Steve Kerr on how Jonathan Kuminga, who has 9 DMPs in the last 10 games, has more success as a long burst player, but you'd be willing. And that might just be leveraging, right? We know that we have to trade him and we know his value is low, but we might be willing to keep him to try to get an extra asset. You're not getting an extra asset for him, brother. You're just going to have to wipe your hands of the situation. But where things get really interesting are teams that could be in position to make some trades, but we're not sure if they will, right? There are certain teams, you look at their team and look at their salary cap and their salary sheet, and you say, hey, man, the New York Knicks just don't have a lot of wiggle room to make a move, right? You got some guys like Gershon Yabusele could potentially get moved, but for the most part, you're not going to see the New York Knicks pull off anything crazy unless Giannis come knocking at the door and say, I want to go to the Knicks, which, again, don't feel like it's going to happen. The Celtics are a team that could go maybe either way, where you can see a report that they'd be interested in a guy like Zubats if Zubats became available, but there's also a world where they try to shed salary to get under the tax, so Anthony Simons is traded for a guy that they could just waive. That's a possibility, even though they've been really good, one of the best teams in the entire Eastern Conference. One of the most interesting trade teams this season is this team, the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are right now 27-9, the second best defense in basketball. Cade Cunningham is playing at an all-NBA level. Isaiah Stewart is playing at an all-defensive/DPOY level. The list goes on and on. So many people are stepping up differently on a nightly basis. But for the Detroit Pistons skeptics, I can't say you're that crazy, right? A team that definitely has the grit, the hustle, the backbone, the dog to compete in any 7-game series, but sometimes it feels like there are other teams that can out-talent them. Cade Cunningham is one of the best with the ball in his hands, but sometimes I feel like he is overtaxed. And they have had games and possessions where their second-best player fluctuates. It could be Dennis Jenkins after he didn't really play for a week, or it could be an Asar Thompson on a tip-in game winner. But I look at what a 7-game series could look like for them and be like, yeah, they could be a team that can trade away some pieces and some players and not give up most of their identity right now or anybody in their true core and still look significantly better. Now, the question is, if you are the Detroit Pistons, does it make sense for you to do that? Or does it make sense to just go into the postseason and see what it really looks like again, and then figure out if we're going to make that big deal or not? Because it's pretty easy for them to be in conversations for the guys that we look at as a piece. A guy like Michael Porter Jr., a guy like Trey Murphy III, if those guys were available, and be like, hey, man, Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and some draft capital, boom, and you still got your entire core of Duran, of Asar, you can probably even keep Braun in all these cases, and Cade and Stewart, and be like, hey, now we got a jumbo shooter to put at our 3 at our 4, that because of our defensive infrastructure, we don't really give a damn if some of those dudes aren't an elite level defensive player, and we still be able to do some cool things. We got some of these dudes like Michael Porter Jr. is obviously just a premier shooter in general, but he also has shown some creation off the bounce. Trey Murphy III, creation off the bounce, and you could use another player like that. So it's not just Cade setting up and trying to score or create for others for every single possession in the postseason. It could be beneficial, but also they love Toby Harris. And I know that's easy to to poo-poo and say like, well, he's Tobias Harris. Even though he's been a starter for the most of his career, he's played for 7 different teams. Who cares if he's traded away? But sometimes that locker room stuff really does matter to the front office and to the players. So it seems easy for us to put Tobias Harris into a trade to get a player that's better than him, but maybe it's not that easy for the Detroit Pistons. And because this team is so young, you can really take a step back. And I know they made it last season, but if you want to like put it on the same level of OKC a few years back, where OKC went into their first official postseason and was like, oh man, yeah, Josh Giddey can't play. We're going to trade him away for all defensive player. Boom. And then they won a championship. Again, the Pistons have more postseason experience with last year compared to that OKC team. But when you have such a young core, maybe there is value to taking a step back and not trying to put your foot on the gas too much just yet and see what you have. Because who's to say that even though we love Trey Murphy or we love Michael Porter Jr., that a better player is not available in the offseason and you just gave up all these assets to get a guy that's really good, but maybe not amazing. And maybe that amazing player becomes available. Now you got Cade and another all-star versus Cade and a fringe guy, or a Cade and a guy that maybe can make it one day. It's a crazy game to play. And that's why I'm so happy I'm an internet general manager and not a real life general manager. Because for me, come on, man. You said Trey Murphy is available in 2K? Hell yeah, send that trade offer. But that's not easily the case. So the Pistons are one of those teams that can really make that decision. They continue to look down. I'm sure the Raptors would love to make some type of move, but some of the contracts that they have on their roster, whether it be Emmanuel Quickley or banged up Jakob Poeltl, I feel like could just be too hard to move. I'm not even sure if Jakob Poeltl is even eligible to be traded based on when he signed his extension, but maybe I'm wrong there. The 76ers don't really have wiggle room to make anything big happen. I think they have a couple tradable first round picks, but all the guys that you would want to trade away potentially to bolster up your team are not making any real money, so it's not really realistic. The Cavaliers are kind of set into their core unless they're going to be some secret sellers, which don't make sense to me. The Orlando Magic are set to their core. They're not going to be a secret seller as well. The Miami Heat are always trying to be buyers, and it makes sense if you could potentially trade that Terry Rozier contract to be a buyer, but we don't know if they could trade the Terry Rozier contract. The Chicago Bulls are one of the more intriguing teams, but because they're ran by stuff and people who, and I'm trying to be nice here, we have no idea what's going to happen. The Bulls have 7 expiring contracts on the book right now, and if all of those guys walk, we have $100+ million in salary space for this upcoming offseason, which makes sense. And that's why I said earlier, teams are bolster up cap flexibility to not do anything, because I'm afraid with this front office that if we did have that cap flexibility, we wouldn't go out there and sign the right people or acquire the right talent. A lot of the time, when teams have these crazy amount of expiring contracts, they use, especially a team like us that are rebuilding and not trying to compete for anything other than the play-in, they use those expiring contracts to take on bad money and get future assets. But you look across the league and be like, what is considered bad money at this point? A lot of the bad money on the books are going to be expiring relatively soon. These teams have just been better at figuring out what to pay players. There's a time where like a end of Gordon Hayward deal last 2 years. That's huge, bad money. But I think about OKC, right? I always got to think about OKC. When the Utah Jazz were trying to clear up some money, they traded away Derek Favors in a top 8 protected pick to just dump off Derek Favors' contract. And eventually OKC would stretch that contract. It didn't even matter to them. And now they have a pick today that is top 8 protected for the Utah Jazz. That's just them taking on bad money for future assets. And I would love for my favorite team to do that. But it doesn't really exist anymore. There's also a world where the Bulls become ultra buyers of buy low candidates. But look across the league. Who are some buy low candidates? Trae Young is obviously a buy low candidate, but the Bulls aren't looking for a point guard. You think Zion, people keep saying Zion. I don't know if Zion's buy low anymore. I just don't know. So the Bulls are an intriguing team, and maybe they're just intriguing because of this damn hat that I'll be wearing because it's my favorite team. But it could be a team that has so many different directions, and I just don't know which direction they'll go in. The Atlanta Hawks obviously are a big team, trading away Trae Young, but also maybe trying to buy, even though they're 4 games under. The Bucks seem like they're a team that's going to be buying, but what are they buying? Are they going to be the team that go get Zach LaVine for pennies? Maybe. The Hornets are still doing some really cool stuff. I think they're 10-6 now when their big 3 plays. Big 3 is a light way to... When there are 3 young guys, LaMelo, Han, and Brandon Miller, when they play, they're above 500. Obviously, getting all 3 of those guys to play at the same time has not been the case, and they just beat OKC by a gazillion points. Even though we like some of their guys, and Moussa Diabate and Khan, Ryan Kalkbrenner, I just feel like there's a center hole there, but it may be just a year too early to be buyers right now. The Brooklyn Nets, who knows? They could sell Michael Porter Jr., or they could be just chilling. The Wizards might get Trae Young, which we know, and then the Pacers are just chilling. At a 13-game losing streak. I have not watched the Pacers game start to finish. Damn, man. It's been over a month, I'll tell you that. And like just straight up sit down. Let me watch the Pacers. Over a month. Watch moments, obviously. Watch possessions of certain players, but a straight up 48 minutes of Pacers ball, no way. Don't sign me up for that. OKC is never going to do an in-season trade that makes sense, or like in-season trade that's big enough to like shake some things up. I feel like they're just cool with what they got right now, even if it's on a 2-game loser streak. The Spurs are standing pat. No way they break up that core, even though they lost to Cam Spencer yesterday. Or is it Pat? I always get it mixed up. I think it's Cam. The Lakers are always going to be in conversations. They got a couple expiring contracts. I don't know what they do with those. The Nuggets don't have wiggle room to make any moves unless Zeke Naji plays so damn good while Jokic is out that he becomes an asset all of a sudden, which doesn't feel like a case. The Raptors are not doing. I'm sorry, the Rockets are probably not doing anything. Like, this is what we're dealing with when it comes to the trade deadline. The Timberwolves seem like they're going to be interested in some players, but the point guard became available and he's like, nah, that's not the point guard for us. The Suns, I don't think they're going to do anything crazy. They always, or at least in the last year or so, they've been buy low players. So maybe they are buying low on players. But again, who's the buy low player? The Warriors, we just talked about them in Kuminga. Who the hell knows? The Trailblazers are such an interesting team to me. I made this pitch a little while ago, and I don't even know if it's even possible. I don't even know if it's possible because the goddamn aprons are so confusing for even a guy like me who prides himself on knowing contracts and stuff. But because, let me look at their salary books. So the big thing here is the DeAndre Ayton money that they stretch. Maybe that prevents them from being buyers right now. But the team has been trying to be a postseason team this year, as you can tell. Unfortunately for them, they started off really good, and Drew Holiday got injured. Drew Holiday's guaranteed so much money for the next couple of years. Oh, my goodness. But they have a guy, Jeremy Grant, who also is always injured. You have Robert Williams, who's also injured more times than he's not. So, like, in my mind, you even have Matisse Thybulle, who's always injured. You have an opportunity, potential, again, not knowing, because, like, your best player, and Danny's making no money. Me and Danny got the same goddamn contract this season. I'm trolling. Trust, I don't make that much money. But he's making so little money that it, like, does it make sense to try to be a buyer now, knowing that Damian Lillard's going to be back? Who knows what level of player Dame is going to be next season? But Dame, where the hell are you, Dame? Oh, right there. He's also going to be making Danny money. So potentially your two best guys next season are making nothing. You have one of the better young centers in Donovan Kuminga who's shooting them 3 balls, everything. So is there a world where you are a sneaky buyer right now? Like, you have some draft capital. You can relinquish the protections on that Bulls pick that you're going to give. Oh, maybe that's why I want them to do stuff. You can relinquish the protection on that Bulls pick and open up some more chances to do some stuff. And the question becomes, Kenny, what type of players should they trade for, right? If they are going to make a trade. I don't have the answer to that. That's way above my pay grade. But maybe you could be a buyer. I don't know. And this is going to sound super crazy. And maybe I'm too deep into it. I got to take a week off. I had a dream of them trading for Jared Jackson Jr. I'll just say that. I just had a dream of it. Speaking of them, the Grizzlies, who the hell knows what they're going to do? The Mavericks, who knows? The Clippers might be more buyers than sellers since they've been looking better. Even though every single game that they win on this streak, the opposing team has shot like 30% or less from 3. I don't know if that's real or not. Derrick Jones-Jr. is now down with another injury. The Jazz are not doing anything. The Kings may be selling a little bit. And then the Pelicans, they have no reason to sell because they don't have their own first-round pick. So that's the landscape of the trade market right now. Nothing is happening, and maybe nothing. Ooh, what did I say? Nothing happened? This is going to be all of us the day after the trade deadline. Just all of us, man. Nothing happened. Anyway, let me know what you think about the landscape. Hopefully, I publish this video and boom, big trade after big trade and big trade. And oh my goodness, the Bulls are now contenders for the first overall pick.